Hi there, it's Tracy Kiernan, and this acrylic painting tutorial is going to show you how to paint nautical blues with acrylics on an 11 by 14 inch canvas. This is a minimal color palette, which is always super fun to have an easy, small amount of colors to work with. So I'm using Liquitex BASICS paint, however, use whatever colors you have available. We will be using titanium white, blue gray, Mars black, phthalo blue, and raw sienna. As far as brushes go, we will be using a 3/4 inch flat wash brush. This is the Princeton Velvet Touch brush. A number 12 bright brush, which is like a 1/2 inch flat brush. This one's a Royal and Langnickel brush. A number 4 round, which is Princeton Velvet Touch. And the number 8 long round is optional. I'm only using this for the fine point to it so I can paint the horizontal lines that you see in the background. You'll need a piece of chalk and a ruler to do some basic drawing and horizontal lines in this. And let's go ahead and get started. I'm working on an 11 by 14 inch canvas that I have placed in a vertical format. And I'm going to load the color blue-gray. So if you don't have blue-gray, this is a specific color for Liquitex BASICS. I'm guessing there's other similar colors in different brands, but if you don't have blue-gray, you can take any gray and just add a little bit of blue to it to kind of make it more of a blue-gray. But that is the prominent color in the background of this. And I suppose you can just do gray and not blue-gray if you want to do it that way too. But I am going to do horizontal paint strokes throughout this background. And I'm going to do this thing where I'm going to be blending colors gently together, but not blending it all the way. I want to try to create this wood look or wood grain look. Like there's this blue wash over this maybe piece of wood that the nautical objects are just kind of laying on, still life sort of scene. So I'm taking the blue gray and titanium white, and I'm just kind of loading my brush in both of those colors and let them blend gently together. I also have Mars black on my paint palette, and I am going to start introducing a little bit of this black. So load your brush in just a teeny tiny amount, like dip it in the corner and then blend that into your color before it dries. We want to give this kind of this variation, rustic, weathered look, and adding a little bit of that black in there gives it some darker streaks of color. It blends very nicely. So just little bits of black at a time. And then continue to fill your whole canvas with this technique. Yours is going to look different from mine, and that's okay. So a little bit of black, a little bit of blue-gray, a little bit of white, and just continue to fill up the rest. If you need to add a little bit of water to your brush, you can. Just don't let it get too watery because it'll start dripping down the colors that are not dry yet. Sometimes it gets under the paint before it dries and then it starts dripping. So keep blending that gently together. The video is speeding up a little bit, but feel free to take your time, pause the video as needed. I like those little streaks of black, so I'm just going to go back in there and blend some more into that to give it more of a weathered look. You can do the same for white as well. You can take streaks of white and blend that in there. When you're done with this, you want to wait for it to dry before going on to the next step. And the next step is going to be painting horizontal lines to kind of represent the in-between parts of the wood panels. And so this is the number 8 long round You can use the 4 round if you're not using this particular brush, or any brush where you can feel comfortable painting a thin line with, or even a paint pen. So I'm taking the color black, adding a little bit of that blue-gray into it so it's not super dark, but it's still pretty dark. It'll still show up. I'm going to take my ruler. I'm just going to estimate. I'm not going to do these lines perfectly. I am using a ruler to help with that, but I'm not going to space them perfectly apart, kind of on purpose to give it that weathered look. And even when I paint these lines, so see, I'm going to take my ruler and do maybe 3 inches above that line. But my line is a little bit thinned down with water, and also it doesn't have to be the same consistency throughout. If it wobbles up a little bit, that's fine. I am wiping the ruler after I measure so I can estimate my next one about 3 inches above that. If you want to do 4 inches, you can do 4 inches. Line got a little wobbly, and that's okay. Taking that and bringing that across. That water helps to get that line to flow, but it shouldn't be too much water. It shouldn't be dripping down under that ruler. And then my next line, so we can estimate. And same thing, another loose horizontal line. Next, I'm going to take my 3/4 flat in titanium white. This is optional, but I want to dry brush some more layering on my weathered wood look. So I'm going to take my brush and dry it. I'm going to load it into titanium white, maybe a little bit of that blue-gray, just so it's not bright white. It's a little dimmed down. But I'm just dry brushing this in between some of those panels. It's kind of glazing over that layer that's already dried. It's giving this weathered look to the background very lightly. I'm going to do that on each of the panels. You can even take this and kind of use the edge of my canvas as a guide to kind of drag that inwards. But this effect is created by letting that brush just barely skid the surface of the canvas. The paint's dry, that means I'm not adding water to it, and barely letting that brush over that layer that's already there without trying to cover it all up. And then when you're done with this step, you want to wait for this layer to dry and get a piece of chalk ready. I'm going to draw the sand dollar. It's going to be a large sand dollar in this, but that's okay because that's the focus of this, is the sand dollar. And sand dollars are circles, but it's a kind of a wobbly, more organic, not a perfect circle. So I'm going to draw this large kind of blob, or you can start with the circle and then you can go back and kind of make some grooves that kind of go inwards or outwards. It's a fairly large one, kind of in the center, a little bit more towards the left of the center. And then when you have your sand dollar shape ready, take your 3/4 flat and titanium white. So we want to cover this background so it's not see-through. And we can achieve that by painting the first layer white. So I'm using my 3/4 flat and titanium white. I'm just going to fill the sand dollar shape in, kind of outline the shape, fill it in solid. If you still have a little bit of that background showing through, that's okay, because by the time we're done with the layers on this one, it shouldn't be showing. Before that white dries, I'm going to introduce the color Raw Sienna to my paint palette. When we mix the color Raw Sienna with white, it's going to create this very pretty light beige color. We don't want to go too dark here. We just want to use this color as a way to kind of create some variations, kind of a sand color in our sand dollar because it's mostly a very light color. So I'm going to take this and kind of add a little bit more dark on the bottom of this and leave the top part a little bit lighter on purpose. And if we end up going too dark, that's okay. We can always go back and layer more white on top of it. I'm going to use the edge of my paintbrush to really define the bottom edge of this. It's a little bit darker along this edge. That'll help later when we do shadowing on this. And I'm just letting that gently blend with the rest. And the paint strokes in the middle kind of go in all different kind of angled directions. There's more detail work to do on our sand dollar, but we want to let this layer dry before we do the little star pattern that's in the middle. So when you're done with this layer, let's rinse the brush and let's work on some of the other details in this painting. So I'm going to get a piece of chalk and load the color Phthalo Blue onto my paint palette. I'm going to draw the starfish in the upper left hand corner. So you're welcome to change the direction of this starfish, but I'm going to have this kind of hang off the edge or the top corner of this just to make it interesting, so it's not fully on the canvas. It's just kind of hanging off the edge, and we only see the bottom part of the star, but we can still see all the points. They're just kind of hanging off the edge. So for starfish, I just draw like a basic star and then go back and sketch the points of the star to where the edges are kind of curved on the points. Starfish don't have to look like perfect stars, so if they're uneven or going kind of in different angles, that's okay. So I'm going to take my 4 round brush in the color Phthalo Blue. It's a really pretty dark blue color and it looks lovely against the background color. I'm just going to take that and start painting the starfish in. This is just going to be the first layer of color. We'll make the starfish look more three-dimensional after we fill this in, after it dries. If for some reason your background is dark and it's not really showing up, you can try making this darker by adding some black into your blue, or you can do the opposite. You can do a light colored starfish. So you could maybe add some white into the blue to lighten it up enough so it can show up. But you're just outlining your shape and then filling it in solid. Next, I'm going to paint the basic shape of my shell, which is going to be in the lower right. I'm going to take my Phthalo Blue. I'm going to add a little bit of black to it. That's going to make a very dark blue color. And I'm going to take some titanium white. I'm actually going to add a little white to it. So it's going to make it kind of this dark blue-gray color. So again, that's Phthalo Blue, a little bit of black, a little bit of white. And then I'm going to paint the seashell. So if you want to draw your seashell first, just like we drew the starfish with the piece of chalk, you're welcome to do it that way. But I am just going to paint this out. So I'm going to do like a little kind of half circle triangular shape or cone shape. It's curved at the top and then it goes inwards. So paint that in solid in the lower right corner. And then the bottom part of the shell is going to be kind of the opposite shape, but smaller. A little bit of water helps to boost that. I'm going to make it just a bit wider, kind of like a fan shape. And then this curves out and goes that way. The top edge of the shell actually is scalloped, so I'm going to go in along this curve and do little curves on the end of the shell to create the scallop edging. In the lower left part of our nautical still life, we have a bit of seaweed. So this is going to be still the number 4 round brush and the Phthalo Blue. I added just a little bit of water in that, kind of twisted my brush. And painting seaweed is very similar to painting tree branches, only they're kind of loose and wavy, and we don't have to worry about the edge going to a very fine point. They just kind of stay the same consistency throughout, but they're branch-like. So I'm just taking blue, also added a little bit of black in there, kind of creates some variation of color. And so some of these little branches are a little bit darker, some are more blue, and just branching them out, wavy lines. Next, in the upper right corner, I'm going to do a little fishnet, and if you want to do something different, like a different kind of shell, you can. I'm going to take titanium white in the foreground and just kind of start with this wavy line. That's going to just kind of go across the corner. And this might change depending on how dark or light the background is. You can do black for the netting if you want. The white, for the most part, is showing up. So there's the first line, and then I'll do a second line that kind of hugs that line, but the lines don't all have to be parallel because of the way the net is kind of draped. So it can change. And then we're going to do the lines that are going the opposite way. So these are going to go like this. And these lines also can start out parallel, but then you can kind of change the way the lines are going. So that one's going kind of inwards, close to that other line. And that kind of just gives it that look that's just kind of draped on the wood panels. And then there's little knots where the corners or where they crisscross. So I'm just going to go in wherever the where it crisscrosses. Just do like a little circle in the middle of that. And then on the edging as well, a little like half circle shape. And then I'm going to take my black without rinsing the brush off. So Mars black on the end. I'm just going to go back over some of these little knots. Gives it like a little dark variation of color. You don't have to detail this like this if you don't want to. If you want to just do it all solid, you can. And then on the edges of some of these lines, just taking that black and kind of going over or under some of the edging just to give it a little bit of shadowing. And then next, as long as the sand dollar is dry, we can go in and start detailing that. There's a little kind of star pattern inside the sand dollar, and we're going to start by taking the number 4 round brush loaded in titanium white. We're going to try to replicate that pattern on the inside. So I'm going to take my white and start the top. I'm going to do a little oval shape that starts in the middle. It doesn't go all the way to the edge of the circle. There's still some space above that. So I'm going to create a little circle below that. So that's going to be kind of the center point of these little petal shapes. There's going to be 5. And there's my second one. And they're all kind of the same length. But again, they don't go all the way to the edge of the sand dollar. Here's my 4th one. And then there's my 5th one. And then without rinsing the brush, grab your raw sienna. On the inside edges of each of those little petal shapes, I'm just going to take my raw sienna, and I'm doing this before that white dries, so it's going to blend with it a little bit. I'm just going to do kind of the edging of those little petal shapes. A little bit more white on my brush. So it's showing up, it's a little bit darker than that kind of beige color that we painted the sand dollar. So we're doing the edging. So on the left side of this one and a little bit on the right side, we're just kind of loosely doing the edging of that petal shape. But the inside part of it stays bright. I'm going to do that to each of the little ovals. We can do a little bit on that circle that we did in the center. So sand dollars also have these like little kind of notches that go all the way through the shape, which means that we're going to need that color from the background. So this is the blue-gray color, and I'm going to do the little hole, little opening notch, and it's like a little oval, and this one is going to be between these 2 petal shapes. This is just solid blue-gray. The next one's going to go under this petal shape, some little oval, and then this one's going to go under this one. I'm going to do 2 more little notches or little openings. This one's going to be right here, and this one's going to be right here. And there's not one on the top. Then I'm going to take my black, little teeny tiny bit of black on the end of the brush without rinsing, and I'm going to do kind of what I just did with the petal shapes, but I'm going to do this little black edge line just on one side of each of the little notches. So I'm doing these all on the left side. This one, I'm going to do it on the bottom to make it consistent with the one on the other side. And this one, I'm going to do this little line at the top. Rinse the brush and then load the end of that brush into raw sienna. I'm going to work on a little bit more detailing of the base of this. So I'm going to outline this bottom part. So remember when we painted it earlier, we added a little bit more dark down here. I'm taking this and I'm outlining the very edge of it. I'm not outlining the entire thing, I'm just kind of stopping less than halfway. I'm taking a little bit of black, mixing black into that, so now this is even darker. I'm taking that darker part and just kind of loosely outlining the very edge of that with that dark. This is going to help the sand dollar look a little bit more three-dimensional. Even though they're kind of flat, they're still kind of, they still have dimension. They're not entirely flat. They curve up a little bit. And then I'm going to take this color, it's white. I still have some of that black on my brush. So if it's getting too gray and dark, rinse the brush and go back and do this. But the intent right here is just to kind of outline the top edge of this with a lighter color. So I'm paying attention to the edging of the sand dollar right now. If some of your chalk lines are still visible from the original drawing, you can erase that with a clean wet paintbrush. And now I'm taking white, still a little bit of the raw sienna on my brush too. And I just want to outline the outer part, the opposite side. So we did the black outline on the inside of that. I'm just outlining the outer part of that, those little notches. And then just a few random brush strokes in there. So if there's any part of this where the background is showing through, you can go back and you can layer that up some more, add more white and the beige color on your sand dollar. You can add another layer in the center where the petals are. I'm going to switch to my number 12 bright brush next, and this is that 1/2 inch flat brush. Get some more titanium white. And what I'm going to do is kind of layer on white over this, but not cover everything up. I'm just going to contour these strokes kind of around the little notches and around the little petals, just to give it some brightness, texture in the paint strokes. I can add another layer of white inside the little petal shapes. And then go along this edge with white right on the edge. Next, I'm going to do a little bit of shadow under the sand dollar. It's going to be kind of casting to the right of it, lower right. If you don't like doing shadows or you're not really comfortable with it, you don't have to do shadows in this. You can just let it be. I'm going to take my blue-gray and darken it with black. It should be, you can do a little test here. It should be, do just a little bit more black. It should be darker than the background. And I'm doing this dry brush style. So when I load my brush, I'm wiping it off with a towel so that I only have a little bit of paint. This should be very translucent, and I'm just gently applying it under and towards the right of that circle. Only a little bit is needed to really make it impact and make it look shadowy. You don't need a dark solid color there at all. And that's all I'm going to do for the shadow. Let's work on our starfish next. So the first layer is ideally dry, and I'm going to take this color over here. This is the color we were using for the shell earlier. It's that blue with a little bit of black and a little bit of white. I'm going to take some more white in there to lighten it up even more. Test this. So this should show up against the blue, but it's not super bright yet. This is kind of our next layer. So we're going to stipple our brush. That means we're painting little dots in the center of each of these star points. When you get in the middle, you're going to add a whole bunch of dots. So little dots in the center of the star points, and then a whole bunch of dots in the middle. Leave the edging blue with no dots. So I'm not taking these dots and going all the way to the ends. I'm leaving that dark blue still visible. So there's your next layer. And then add more white to your brush. This time do the same thing. Do little dots in the very, very center of each of the star points. Don't add too many. So when we get lighter and lighter, we don't want to use as much of that lighter color. We want to use less and less of that lighter color. And do a whole bunch in the middle of the starfish. Do not add the little dots on the edge. The edge is dark and shadowy. We want to leave that alone. So that is your next layer. And when that dries, we'll do a pure white layer on that. But I'm going to kind of let that dry a little bit before doing that pure white layer. So let it dry a little bit. Rinse your brush off and then load the very, very tip of the brush into the color titanium white. So you want to pinch the bristles, little titanium white. And this time we're going to do the same thing, but we're only doing one thin row of dots right down the center. So one tiny row of those pure white dots right in the center of each of your star points. And they all kind of just meet in the center. Next, I'm going to add some more detail to the coral. So I'm going to take this brush and load it into that bluish gray color, so that phthalo blue with the white and a little bit of black. I'm just going to go over some of these with that lighter color and just kind of highlight one side of it, so it gives it a little pop of brightness on some parts of the coral. And you can add a little bit more white too. It kind of depends on your background. So if it's blending too much in with the background, you might want to just keep it mostly dark, or just add the lighter parts on some parts of the coral, but not all parts of the coral. I'm going to add another layer of paint to the fishnet as well, so let's clean off the number 4 round brush, and I'm going to take my white and go back over my lines. The second coat of paint. In this upper right area, it is blending in a lot with the background. So I'm actually going to take black, mix that with white, kind of do like a dark gray here. So I'm going to make the net go dark right here just to get that to stand out a little bit better. Any leftover chalk lines from drawing could be erased with a clean wet paintbrush, and I erased the starfish area chalk lines off camera, and now I'm going to do a little bit of shadowing and outline work for my starfish, which is optional, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to take my number 4 round brush and black and just kind of loosely outline the bottom edge of the starfish shape. So this one's kind of a bottom edge, this one is seen from the bottom, and this line right here. So none of the other lines are going to be outlined. Wipe the brush off, add a little bit of the blue-gray to it. So this is dry brush style. That means there's not a lot of paint on my brush. Wipe that paint off so that's barely visible, and just gently brush your shadow below those dark outlines that you just painted. And this should be very see-through. You can also try this watercolor style, so you can take your blue, gray, and black and kind of water it down a little bit just to get that translucent shadow effect. The last thing we're going to do is detail this shell up. So we started with our very dark layer, and now I'm going to take my clean number 4 round brush and titanium white, and I'm just going to loosely outline these lines that are going from that scalloped edge, and they just kind of go downwards, inwards, about halfway, and I just release the pressure of the brush. I'm going to get some more phthalo blue. I'm going to mix blue and white together to make kind of this medium color blue. So we have this really dark layer, and now we have this medium color blue, and I'm just going to kind of drag that in the middle of each of these little segments on the edge of the shell, and then again kind of releasing the pressure as I go down, so the bottom part of the shell ends up being a little bit dark. So just taking that color, that light blue, and just dragging it down lightly in the middle of each of those segments. I'll add a little bit of this blue towards the bottom, but again, I want to keep that bottom a little bit darker. So I'm dragging this down a little bit further. And then I'm going to take that white, and I want to outline this little bottom part right there, and this part right here. Without rinsing my brush, I'm going to grab a little bit of black and just add a little bit of shadowing on this bottom piece. And then I'm going to take the black and go back and re-outline these middle lines to darken those. And just like what we did with the starfish, only we're not doing dots, we're just dragging light paint brush strokes to create lighter and lighter layers. So I'm going to do a lighter layer next, and I'm going to do this very lightly, kind of dry brush style, go back over that kind of medium blue I just did, and this is white mixed with that blue so that it's lighter, and you only need a little bit to brighten that up. So I did that in the middle of each of the sections and kind of stopped halfway down where I left the bottom part of that shell darker, and maybe a little bit of highlighting on the left side of this piece, maybe a little bit down here as well. If we want, we can do like these little kind of brush strokes on this to kind of make that part look a little scalloped. So you're just kind of dragging the light blue paint strokes, and then you can take your black and you can outline the edging of that bottom piece. So you don't have to go in as much detail with the shell if you don't want to. You can keep it simplified. I'm going to take some more of this darker color, this phthalo blue, and just kind of drag some darker colors towards the bottom and then on this bottom piece as well. And then I'm going to take titanium white and then go back and re-outline some of the shell just to kind of brighten up some of the lines. So this helps, especially if your color blends in too much with the background. You can use white as a way to kind of outline your shapes. So I'm outlining a little bit and also kind of dry brushing some of that in the center of some of the ridges on the shell. And then I'll outline this bottom part as well. I'm going to take my white, rinse that blue off, but take the white and do another layer on the inside of our sand dollar. So after layers dry, sometimes they get dark, so we're just kind of going back over with another coat. I really want these petal shapes in the sand dollar to be bright. And then adding a little bit of white on the outside of those little notches. And a little bit of outlining on the edging. And this is the conclusion of how to paint nautical blues. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching, and thanks for painting with me.